We just need more people in CEO positions and board positions to have intelligence.
When a man carries passion, it's just passion. And when a woman carries passion, oh, she's just being emotional.
And sure, that's a definition of success, but I don't think that's a definition of happiness, right? Like our lifespan is what, 80, 90 years, if we're lucky, if we have good health for that long. So why would we throw away this short, precious time doing something that we don't love?
Hey there. Welcome to HiK Podcast. I'm Karol Figueroa, your host, and this is where we empower individuals to embrace their authentic selves and bridge the gap between organizations and people. Today, we're diving into a topic very close to my heart: women's journey in the business world. When I started my career in corporate America, I quickly realized that the path to leadership was only sometimes straightforward for a woman. Have you ever heard about the glass ceiling? Well, the glass ceiling is a unofficial barrier that many women face as they're climbing up the ladder, meaning that you cannot see it, but it's there, and there's a very clear gap between minority and diversity within the executive stable. Before I introduce our guest today, let's dive into some questions to ask yourself. Think about all of the corporations that you have worked for or know. How many of the managers and leaders are women? And even further, how many are women of color? You're probably wondering why leadership often looks so uniform. Well, I have theories, but only some of the answers. That's why I've got our expert guest today. Together, we will learn about her perspective and how she broke the glass ceiling and became the CEO of her own company. Today, we welcome an inspiring leader and innovator, Vanessa Jupe, CEO and founder of Leva. Vanessa's journey is a statement to the power of perseverance, values, and vision. She started Leva out of a personal understanding of the challenges faced by women in corporate America and as mothers, particularly balancing the demands of being a kick-ass boss, breastfeeding, kids, life. Vanessa's life is guided by her top 3 values: continuous learning, family, and freedom. And she's not just a leader, she's a builder of teams, a developer of people, and always seeking to learn from those around her. Vanessa, welcome to HiK Podcast. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much, Karol. I'm excited to be here with you.
I've been benefiting from your brilliance for so many years by being allowed to have these conversations with you. And it just makes me so happy that I get to share that with the world. And, you know, we've had some really good conversations about this in the past, but I think that a lot of women don't get the opportunity to have this conversation, especially in their workplace, and actually ask questions that are real, right? Almost like, is Santa Claus real, right? Like that's how real this reality is. So
yes,
I am going to start with the question number 1, which is a question I think we all wonder. Why are so many few women CEOs in the corporate world? What's your take on it?
Well, my take is that this is well documented, first of all. So there's so much great research out there. There's a great organization called Catalyst that documents women's journeys and rise and the discrepancies that exist. So I would just point to them as a really good resource for data. And what I would say is, why are there so few female CEOs, especially in large companies? It's because people like to promote other people that look like them. And the majority of folks that are in leadership, in senior positions, on boards, are white men. And so white men find affinity, find understanding with other white men. So they tend to promote folks that look like them, that behave like them, that have backgrounds like them. And it's unfortunate because we also know from data that diverse teams, people of color, women, men, together perform much better. The ROI is better. And yet it's hard to break those biases. So people tend to gravitate to other like people. And I'm sure we all see that when we go to different social functions. There's a group of men standing together. There's a group of women standing together. There's a group of white people standing together. There's a group of black people standing together. And it's just hard to break that kind of way that people are used to functioning. But we really need to, because we get much better outcomes when we do.
I love that you brought that up, because for me, something that I've constantly been working on is that bias. And I recently just published in the newsletter that I had my own bias learning and I have my own understanding of privilege. And I am a Black Latino woman, right? I tell my boss I check all the boxes, right? Because they are checking them, these corporations are. And even though going through a really good diversity and inclusion training, I realized, oh, wait, hold up, I have biases too. And even though I have, I have all of this maxed out shirt, like I still have a certain level of privilege that other Latino women or Black women don't have. But either the opportunities have been given by my parents or my corporation, and how I'm using that privilege is also very important. So thank you for bringing that up, because I believe it is very important. Can we just say, well, this is just how the world is and we just need to learn to navigate it in it?
I'm sure some people can.
Some people are doing great in it.
Some people have done that. I don't know that that's the right answer for society and for the future. I actually would say no. It's funny. I was having a similar conversation with somebody earlier this week, and we were talking about how, there are women that have gotten to high levels of success in corporate America, not CEO level, but C-suite level, and they don't help other women. They don't help junior women coming up behind them. It's that queen bee syndrome where they're like, oh, I got this precious thing that is only available to one woman in this company, and I'm not going to help anyone else. And they all really follow that same mold of like, I'm going to just be nice. I'm just going to keep my opinion to myself. I'm going to make friends with everyone. I'm going to do what I'm told. I'm going to keep my head down. I'm going to be quiet. And it's only for me. It's not for anyone else. And I don't know about you, Karol, although I think I do. Like, that's not the kind of person I want to be. And that's not the kind of corporate environment I want to work in. And what you see with companies that's the way that they evolve is that they're on the decline. You can look at so many companies, and I'm thinking of some in particular, where that's the type of minority leader that they support. And those companies are not doing well in the current environment. So I think it can continue that way, but I don't think it's going to be good for humanity in general. And I know it's not going to be good for companies because we already know the data has shown that is not what success looks like.
I absolutely love that you brought that up, because I can say I didn't believe in Santa Claus. I am recently in a company where I do believe that they try and they make active efforts to fill in the gap of diversity and inclusion. I will say that even the company and the CEO are trying. There's still some departments that have opportunities. Like, not every department is like the other. Right. But you have successfully managed to have a diverse staff where majority of your staff is minorities, whether it's a woman or a person of color. I was lucky enough to be one of your first corporate coaches in Leva, and still extremely grateful for that opportunity. Love the way you lead. Tell me a little bit more about some of the tactics you utilize to make sure that you hire for that diversity, and what advice you have for other companies to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, we're very lucky because we've had a great pool of candidates that have come to us because we're very, very mission driven. I mean, our whole focus at Leva is supporting and uplifting mothers, and especially women that are wanting to balance motherhood and career in the early stages and trying to figure things out. So we get a lot of really passionate women that come to us that want to be part of our mission, want to support other women, and want to see, the environment that we're in evolve. And I think it is, there's a lot of other data that shows that women supported by women and people of color supported by people of color do better. They have better outcomes. They feel better understood. So having that diversity is critical if you want to provide the right care. So I think just, being open to it, being mission driven. But the other thing I'll say is there's been some really good research and articles out there as far as how do you increase diversity in hiring. And so there's a tech company, can't remember the name of it, but they were talking about how they were really having a hard time hiring women, especially into technical roles. And so they made one change and one change only. And that change was that if they got any resumes and they could tell by the name on the resume that it was a woman that applied, they automatically gave her a phone screen. And that change alone dramatically increased the hiring of women candidates. That was the only change. And it was just because they were giving them a chance. And then the other thing that I think is a really cool example of really going to great lengths to change your hiring process, which is not applicable for every industry, but there was some research done on symphony orchestras, and they were hiring musicians, but they were significantly hiring men over women. And they really didn't know why that was. Were they better musicians? What was the cause? And so they ended up putting a curtain between the folks that were hiring and the musicians that were auditioning. And so they started seeing that they were hiring more women, but there was still a little bit of bias because you could hear when high heels were being, used to walk across the stage. And so then they also told everyone, just wear flats, wear comfortable shoes. And with those changes, the hiring of women into the orchestra significantly increased. So they went to great length to not know the gender of the person that was auditioning because there was so much unconscious bias. And so to your point, we are dealing with that every day. So we have to become really creative about the ways that we try to recruit and try to screen. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of research also that says that if a man's name is on something or authored by a man, he's 2 times more likely, or that is 2 times more likely to be thought of as factual, of that to be intelligent, that sort of thing. So women just have a lot of bias against us. And of course, it's worse for people of color. So, there's a lot that's out there that we're up against. So we really have to be intentional about how we make change.
Yes. And, I love that research. And I know Freakonomics started with they did it based on people of color as well for the resumes. And I don't know if I told you the story, but my daughter's name is Blake. And the reason I named her Blake was because I wanted her to have more opportunities for employment when she grew up. Like, I wanted to eliminate the question factor before she even showed up at the workplace so she can have a better chance. I didn't do that for my son. So like that explains to you like the privilege that my son was just born with, that I did not have to worry about what gender showed on the resume for when he got hired.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really incredibly smart move, while also very unfortunate.
Very unfortunate, very sad. Like it's just the reality. And I think it happened to me actually once. I went to a job interview. My name is Karol with a K, which could be Charles or Carlos in Polish. So in a lot of Jewish communities, a lot of men are named Karol with a K. So I did show up to a job once, and the guy expected a man, and he actually told me that in an interview.
Did you get the job?
Oh, yeah. I might have out loud said, well, now you're going to have to kind of hire me, And it was, I was pretty young. I was probably early 20s, and I was pretty assertive, to say that out loud, for say the least. But if I didn't, I think he would have got into a bigger issue. But also, obviously, the employment didn't last long, because even a person that thinks that way is not someone. But I do want to bring up something that you brought up, because I think some of the stuff that you share is so valuable. You and I share the same perspectives on terms of bringing people up with us and helping others like us achieve our goals and our dreams. And I believe that at times there's that perspective of, okay, there's only 2 women that can be in the leadership team. So if I try to promote another woman, then my position will be taken away. I've also heard from some women, and I used to have this mentality early in my career when I had a couple of bad experiences. Oh, it's easier working for men than working for women, And I want your perspective on this. But what I quickly realized is that people are people, and I don't like working for certain people, whether it's men or women. But I want to hear your perspective on that, because I'm pretty sure you probably heard that as well before.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. And it's interesting because, to your point earlier, that there are still so few women in leadership and in senior levels. I was talking to a woman who I deeply admire, who was Chief Digital and Technology Officer at a large company I worked for a long time ago. Just connected with her again after years the other day. And so she's been very senior in a lot of different large companies. And this is her first time working for a female leader, so where she is now. And she said, it's amazing. Like, the woman is amazing. She's supportive. She actually cares about work-life balance and time with family, which this senior leader has never experienced before. And so I do think it really does hugely depend on the human being and not the gender of the human being. I have worked for great bosses that have been male. I've worked for great bosses that have been female, and the opposite is true, right? One of my worst bosses was a woman, but I've also had a terrible boss that was a male. Two terrible bosses that come to mind. So yeah, I don't think that really matters. I think what matters is how do they treat you as a human being? Are they, and you, Karol, have done a great job of leading conversations like this. I remember when you and I were working together at that large financial services company that I won't name, you did a session with my leadership team where you had us think about the best leaders we ever had. And we plotted them kind of on different axes, right? Around like what were they, did they give us autonomy? Were they micromanagers? Kind of what kind of traits did they embody? And what we all felt was the leaders that we liked the most knew us as a person and they trusted us. So they gave us large amounts of accountability and freedom to do work the way we saw fit without dictating how it needed to be done. And that's not a thing about gender, right? That's just a thing about being a good leader and trusting your people and hiring well and then holding them accountable. So that's my take on the story.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for remembering that. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, we have a couple. We still use that in HiK Trainings, but we have a couple where we do want to bring up those memories because I will not be where I am right now without representation. I will not be where I am right now. And I remember when I first started in Bank of America, I worked in retail before, but that was my first corporate job in a corporate building. I still remember my first director that it was a Black female. And I never questioned my entire career whether it was possible for me to become a director. It never became a question because I witnessed this firsthand as soon as I walked into the corporate world. And I saw how she was respected and loved and how she loved her team. And she was truly a service leader. And where will we be, right, without representation? I see what you do. I see what you're doing. I see how you're helping women within your company. And I do need to mention this, like you left amazing jobs in the corporate world for your passion to helping women. And actually it has even helped your career even more because now you're a CEO, you are a femtech founder, like dreams that many women just wish to have that they don't even know that it's obtainable. What made you believe that it was obtainable and how do you combat, if you had at all, imposter syndrome in that process?
Oh man, that's a good question. So what made me believe it's possible? I've worked for several large companies and I've seen the things that get in the way of those companies being really successful. A lot of times it's the fear of having hard conversations. A lot of times it's the unwillingness to challenge the status quo. And so from large companies, from that perspective, I felt like, man, if you were to lead in a way that you could really get to the nitty gritty of things, this company could be so much more successful. And then before I really went all in on Leva, I had gone to a startup that was incredibly well funded. They were 5 years old. They had hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. And when I got there, and I was really excited, I wanted to see how a startup worked from the inside. When I got there, what I learned was the politics were just as toxic at that small company. And the management was even worse, and they were hemorrhaging tens of millions of dollars a month in negative cash flow. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, the founders were male, so I think that has a lot to do with like the amount of funding they were able to raise. But at any rate, I was like, wow, if this is how a startup is run, and they've been able to raise this kind of funding, I can definitely do it. Like I have confidence in myself and my abilities, and I've done a lot of really amazing things with my teams at larger companies. So I have what it takes. So I had that confidence. And then I also knew that if for whatever reason down the road I want to go back to corporate America, I am very talented. I've been able to get great jobs and have a great career so far. So that's always an option for me. So why not try this thing that I care deeply about? Why not bet on myself and do something I'm passionate about? Because we have but a short time in our lives to do anything, right? Like our lifespan is what, 80, 90 years if we're lucky, if we have good health for that long. So why would we throw away this short, precious time doing something that we don't love?
Thank you for saying that. I felt that in my core because one, thing I have learned in unlearning certain things that sometimes you acquire by being in the corporate world for so long is that sometimes we value things because it's been taught to us to value. So, when you say that to me, what it says to me and many of our listeners here today is, are you in a corporate world because you value whether it's the benefits or the paycheck every 2 weeks? And are you doing it because you've been taught that is what brings value? Because there's many other ways in which you can make an income. I literally had this conversation with a female at work, being at her company. She works in the medical industry. She is the office manager for the medical industry, knows the patients to heart, knows the treatment of the patients to heart. The doctors consult her for everything. She makes $11 an hour.
Oh, wow.
She has seen people getting promoted next to her, after her, everyone that she has trained getting promoted, but she does not. And when she confronted the employer to ask them, hey, why can I be the supervisor? I was told during COVID that would be my path. And they were like, well, you're happy where you are anyway because you enjoy being an overachiever.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a new one.
You're happy where you are.
That is,
just stay in your place. We like what you're doing. We don't want to change it.
At least they said it out loud, right? Maybe, someone might have thought it and never said it. And then she called me yesterday for a coaching, and she asked me, she's like, so what should I do? I was like, you need to go. Like,
right.
But I love my job. I love my coworkers. Okay, let's deconstruct that. What do you love about it? And she's like, oh, I love my coworkers. I made good friends. I'm like, well, they will be your friends when you go, if they are good friends, and you'll make new friends in the new place. And the kind of field she's in, there's plenty of other offices that do the same field that she can apply the same knowledge. So she realized quickly, oh, okay, well, let me go tomorrow and tell them that I'm going to go out there and apply to new jobs. I was like, no. Yeah. You wait till you get the offer, and then you show up and say, I've been asking for a promotion this long. If not, I'll take on this other job. So the reason I'm sharing all this is because you need to understand that you are worth it and that you can get that promotion. You need to get to the next level. I don't want this to be taken as I'm blaming the woman for not getting the promotion. Believe me, I am not. What I'm saying is, like, if they do not value you there, which is what I hear you experience as well, which is crazy because I know how brilliant you are. There's other ways, and you had to deconstruct your idea of what quote unquote success is and say, wait, hold up, I can start my own company and help women along the way.
Right. Karol, I think that's a really important point. And I feel like our society does a really good job of telling us that to be successful, you have to work in corporate America, you have to climb the ladder, you have to get better titles and get more income and that sort of thing. And sure, that's a definition of success, but I don't think that's a definition of happiness. I put a quiz out on LinkedIn a couple of weeks back where I asked folks, like, what do you care more about? If you had to pick happiness or success, what would it be? And the vast majority, unsurprisingly, said happiness. But when you look at the way we prioritize our day-to-day lives, we're not prioritizing our happiness. We're really prioritizing societal expectations of success. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately because I struggle with that still. I've been a people pleaser. I've been an achiever most of my life. This is going off the rails a little bit, but when I think about the moments in my life that I really enjoy, that make me happy, so much of it is not about like sitting behind a desk or being in meetings. So much of it is about like being with friends and family, being out in nature, exploring, doing things like that don't cost a lot of money, that are really fun, that are really freeing. And yes, we all need money to live, but I don't think we need nearly as much as we do when we're really trying to compete in the American dream of the rat race,
Yes. I love that you said that. When you think about the moments that make you happy and you go back, are you really going to take with you? Yeah, there might be some good moments in your corporate world, but even I've been in corporate 20 years. And when I look back, the best moments I had in corporate were because of the people that were in it. It was who I did those things with that really impact those, and I cannot say this enough, because not everyone gets motivated by the connectedness at work, right? Like some people get motivated by autonomy, others by mastery, others by financials, right? Like everybody got different motivations, but you will make those connections everywhere you go if you're a person that wants and craves that level of connection. But to your point, it is those moments of happiness. I don't want to let you go without asking these questions because I can talk to you forever. It's always a delight. What will you say to other companies for them to start considering more women into this C-suite, right? And what will you also say to those women that are not being appreciated in the current role, that they're doing and have done everything that they can, and they're still not being considered for that C-suite?
It's a good question. No, it's a deep breath because
it is.
you already said it, right? If you're not being appreciated, if you're not getting the opportunities that you know you deserve, you have to go somewhere else. It's not good for you to stay where you are. There's no reason. When you stay in a bad environment that you're not appreciated in, you're absorbing what is happening to you, and you're letting it affect your sense of self. And I know this because I've been through it, and I've known so many other people that have gone through that and start to feel like, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I don't deserve that. And that's not true, right? So many people that get to certain levels of leadership are not better than you. They're not smarter than you. They're not more talented than you. Maybe they have other advantages, like you mentioned, Karol. Maybe they're male. Maybe they're white. Maybe it's those things. And that's really all it took. And unfortunately, they're there. You got to go somewhere else, And sometimes the reason I sigh deeply is because right now the economy isn't great, and there are lots of people out of work looking for jobs, right? But it will get better. In the next year to 2 years, the economy will be better, and there will be a lot more jobs on the market. So I would say try to find something now, but don't give up. Even if it takes a while, look and see what else is available for you. And unfortunately, sometimes in the current state of affairs, that may even be a lateral move, even though that's not the best thing. It's better than staying in an environment where you're not appreciated. And I will say that a friend of mine who worked on my team previously, who was a director, really did deserve to be able to move up in her career, but the company that we were at, they were never going to promote her. She ended up eventually getting laid off, and then a few months went by, but then she found a senior director role at another company where she's making more money, and she's loving it. So it was a painful process. It was a longer process than anybody wanted, but she ended up with the right outcome. So there's that. And then you mentioned something else about women in leadership and how do you convince C-level executives, maybe the CEO, maybe the board, to promote more women. Like, you can't convince people, right? Like, they have to either be the right type of person that's going to believe that equity and diversity matter, or they have to be really smart and really motivated by making good financial choices. And hopefully most people that get into leadership are of that mindset. And just look at the data. Look at the data, because there's so much information that proves that companies with diversity in senior leadership roles dramatically outperform those that don't have those. So, that's all I can say. And I mean, there's so much data for C-suite, for funding, female founders, that just shows, like, when you invest in diversity, when you invest in women, the results follow. So we just need more people in CEO positions and board positions to have intelligence. And that's it. Be intelligent, make good decisions, make financially motivated decisions. That's all it takes.
Apparently is very underrated, that particular skill set to have sometimes. Not talking about any board or C-suite in particular, just saying, stating out loud.
Right. Not naming names here.
You are in tech. And you are one of the smartest product people I know. I know we're talking about just women in business, but I also think there's a gap, and there's certain leaders of very big organizations that make a lot of money a year that have chosen in very high AI companies to only have a board full of men. Yeah. And right now I'm working on my AI certification. I know so many women that are very versed in the AI machine learning world. Yeah. What would you encourage for us to start getting an increasing participation and for us to take more of the AI space, technology as women, because it's going to just keep growing. And I know you are one of the few that have been able to break your barrier into that world. And I also selfishly want to know.
Well, I know exactly what you're talking about, by the way. And that individual, one of the individuals that I'm thinking of, if we're talking about the same person, I mean, talk about like someone that's had success that's not based on merit. Not, that's not based on merit. That guy had a very wealthy family, got lucky with one of his deals. Every deal he's had, everything he's done has been, for the most part, started by someone else, led by someone else. Even if he's the figurehead, he's not the person that's making the decisions. And when he does, he causes chaos. That's a whole other thing that I'll go down the road and talk about at some point, but that's not the point of your podcast. But I will say he has taken companies from other people and been very public and loud about them, and he's got connections, and it is what it is. It's unfortunate. But I've also, to your point, let's talk about the women, have had the pleasure of working with some really phenomenal women that are amazing at AI, that are amazing at data, that are amazing at product, and blending all of those things together. And so what I would say is, just because you don't see the representation out there doesn't mean it's not there. And there are so many people that are pissed about the lack of recognition of women in AI. They're creating their own forums, they're creating their own lists. So they're out there, and Carol, I can send you some. Like, go join those groups, go make your own voice, make yourself heard. Some of the top voices in AI are women. If you look at LinkedIn, like, women are really, really making waves in AI. And I think women have to start their own companies to really start to move the needle, and doing that is going to be what changes things. You're not going to necessarily be able to change things from the inside of a large company, but start your own and find other like-minded founders, find other like-minded female investors. There are thankfully increasing numbers of female investors that are investing in other female founders. So those are my thoughts off the top of my head.
I love it.
Feel free to edit any of that out because I kind of ranted for a bit.
No, that's when you're my favorite, when you show all that passion. Because I love passionate women. I'm surrounded by passionate women. And I say that word for a reason. Because when a man carries passion, it's just passion. And when a woman carries passion, she's just being emotional. But if, a particular man says something about an entire company and, and being all passionate about it, it's like, oh my God, he has, and I want us to stop being afraid of being passionate. Right. I think self-regulation and emotional regulation, absolutely, there's a time and a place. I am not going to lose it in my kid's soccer game, there's a place for everything, but to express passion over what you believe. And I appreciate that you always bring that to the table. And that's why you're doing amazing. And I love that. So I have one more question for you. And this is a very crucial part of I believe, learning and unlearning behavior. Diversity and inclusion trainings, do you think they work and it actually makes a difference?
I think it's really important to have that kind of training and to have people go through it, because I think so many of us, well, first of all, most people aren't going to do the work on their own, right? And so you have to at least kickstart it. You have to get people to be aware that bias exists, that you need to know, like, when you're experiencing your own bias, that there are ways to address things and that you should be addressing things. So I think it is really critically important. And, years ago, I brought in diversity training at the company that I was at because of the craziness that was happening in the world. And it kind of it was after George Floyd, and we were all like, oh my God, what's happening in America? This can't be the way things are. So I do think it's important, and I do think it has a place. And I think in general, just to kind of like move it into another direction, I think you do a lot of really fabulous work on the training front, on the coaching front, holistically with teams. And so what I would say is you can never overinvest in your people. And whether that's like a personal growth plan for someone, a personal coach, an executive coach, I've worked with several, I find them incredibly helpful. And I've also brought in training, strengths training and team-oriented development for organizations that I've been a part of. And it truly helps people understand one another, bond, and learn the best ways to work together. So I think investing in your people with all kinds of training, skill set based, understanding one another, team building, it's really important. So that's something else that I would just highly recommend to your listeners.
I love that. Thank you for that. I have had both. And what made me want to start a training company was that I am the person you want to build your training programs for. I freaking hate corporate training. I hated sitting down and finishing it. I hated to have to check the box. I had to keep score. Like, it was just terrible. So like for me, I remember having diversity and inclusion trainings that were like had information, right? But it was not helpful for me to learn things that I've learned when I had good diversity and inclusion training. Which, if your diversity and inclusion training does not talk about unconscious bias, covering, and that everyone has privilege, you're not fully understanding what diversity and inclusion training is. Because those three things are key for you to understand how, one, minority groups that you know nothing about now have to navigate the world. Two, how you respond naturally or unnaturally, whether you learn it because you watched too many Disney movies growing up, or you learn it because of your environment did not have the diversity and inclusion. It is crucially important. Also, diversity and inclusion looks different in every continent, right? So in America, our diversity and inclusion needs look very different than in Latin America, where there's more colorism and more discrimination based on countries. And in Europe, it's more about immigration, right? So I am with you. I recommend everyone those three topics, search them in every training. Unconscious bias, covering, and privilege. Those three things have to be your training, whether it's with us or whoever you want. There's plenty of good diversity and inclusion companies out there that really offer really good training. And it's a first start towards you getting really good knowledge for your team and understanding how to work with each other. Well, Vanessa, it has been a complete pleasure to have you here, inspiring us with your knowledge, and thank you for breaking the glass ceiling, and thank you for helping other women come along with you.
Thank you, Karol. It's always great talking to you, and I'm so excited about what you're doing. This is great.
Thank you. I am excited too. Well, we'll talk soon. Vanessa, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for being here today with us. To summarize our conversation, I encourage our listeners to continue this meaningful discussion in your own networks, to take action to support other women and women in leadership. Remember, for today's conversation, it is as much about what you do for yourself as for you do for others, but also being clear and having a clear path of what do you want and makes you happy. Know what other companies or other people dictate that should make you happy. Hey there, welcome to HiK